Yep, another punchy kicky show. A lot more punchy going to take place in this show than the kicky because the guy I'm talking to is a guy that I heard a lot about him a while back when I interviewed one of his students, one of the young ladies who was training with him. You'll remember the show, Bukiwa Nonina. If you haven't, go check it out on the website, ruckusmedia.co.za. But I found out a lot of stuff that this guy was doing, and it's taken a while, but I have him. He's in front of me, and pity we can't be face to face. But then again, the COVID regulations and all that kind of jazz. But Harry Ramogoadi-Manaka, thank you for your time. I know you've just had a session with the young guys, training them, teaching them. Thank you for your time, and welcome to the Punchy Kiki Show.
Thank you so much, Mark, and thanks for having me. And I know we've been trying to do. I think we tried to do this last week and it didn't happen. But we're finally here, and thanks for your patience and persistence.
Harry, I mean, obviously, a lot of boxing fans would know where you've come from. I mean, a debut back, what was it, 1998? 34 bouts later, 22 wins, 10 losses, 2 no results. That's your professional boxing record. For me, it's always interesting how guys get into the sport. So my lead question always, what got you into the sport of boxing?
What got me into the sport of boxing? I think, well, my dad was a boxer, Mark, back in the days, bare knuckle fighting in the train, but he never got to do it professionally, you know. And it's four sons at my house, you know. My older brother, myself, and 2 younger brothers. So, and unfortunately, boxing chose me instead of everyone else in the family. So I suspect my dad always, obviously, he couldn't box professionally, and maybe in his prayers, he always thought one of my boys must do it. And I don't know if he mentioned my name in his prayers, but yeah, there you go. Fast forward to when I started boxing, and you know, I became that person. And but I love boxing. You know, my older brother loved soccer, but he understood and he loved boxing as well. But I just had deep love for boxing, for the art, for you know, the science and the fighting. And yes, I used to fight a lot in the streets, but I got attracted to it properly. You know, I love the art. You know, I was young, and when I was growing up, we didn't have TVs. You know, my neighbor had a TV, so and this was back in Limpopo, and my parents were in Joburg, and we had a neighbor and a man who loved boxing. That man was from KZN, and you know, he had businesses in Limpopo. So as you can understand, he had businesses, so he had a TV. So he would be watching. He knew my love for boxing. I don't know how that happened. And back in the days, we would have to wake up early. Well, we still do, to watch those fights. But you have to catch it then, because there's no repeat or whatever. You know, there's no. And this new thing that you can record or stuff like that. So he would wake me up to come join him. He was just staying with his wife. So I guess he also, for him, it was a case of he doesn't want to sit alone and watch this thing alone in the wee hours of the morning. So he would rope in to come and sit there and watch with him as a young boy, just sitting there and watching this thing. I don't think I really understood what I later got to understand. But all in all, what I can say to you, you know, is that that's how I got into boxing. Sitting with this man, watching Tommy Hands and Sugar Ray and the late Marvin Hagler, may his soul rest in peace. And that's how I got introduced to the sport of boxing.
Now, Tommy, I mean, obviously it's a long road in terms of moving from a young guy interested in the sport, then growing the passion, getting into a gym, getting through an amateur career into the professional ranks. I mean, back in the day, young kids getting into the sport, turning professional. I mean, that was a big thing then, but also a very daunting experience for you, especially bearing in mind the time here in South Africa that you as a young man were getting into the sport. Obviously, a lot of challenges you had to overcome, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, the first challenge, as you're talking, I'm thinking now, the first challenge would be where I come from. Boxing was not a big thing. You know, I come from a small town in Limpopo called Leboagomo, and boxing was not a big thing. I mean, right now I'm the superstar. When you talk boxing, people only know me. I'm the only guy who who became a proper professional boxer in the township where I come from. There was in school there was a teacher who tried to introduce it, and he trained us a bit, but it never got to catch the fire that it was supposed to catch. I mean, you go to the Eastern Cape,
Yeah.
boxing is the sport. You know what I mean? Everywhere you go, that's how they play. That's how they do the stuff. You know, we had softball, we had soccer and netball. Those were and athletics, well, the running and all of that. Those were the only things that people did. But the main sport was soccer and softball. Softball is big in Limpopo, and netballs for the girls, obviously. But other than that, there's no boxing unless you go far north to Venda and those places where Cassius comes from, because Cassius' dad is always pushed it. And that's why they could even produce Olympic guys that could go to the Olympics from that side. Other than that, Limpopo, I think that's the only area where it is well represented in Venda and Tohoyando, stuff like that. But yeah, it was daunting. It was not easy. But I have to also say, Mark, my dad, because he loved the sport so much, he would say names. He would say, your Sonny Liston. I never knew of Sonny Liston. As a young boy, my dad would drum those names into my head.
Yeah.
Sonny Liston. And he would tell me stories about Sonny Liston, Muhammad Ali. Ali obviously transcended boxing. So you know who Ali was, just like you know who Mike Tyson is,
Yes.
or Floyd Mayweather. But Sonny Liston, when we were growing up, those were not the names that you would just hear randomly, anyone mentioning them. Floyd Peterson. And here locally, my dad would talk about the likes of Aladdin Stevens. And then also what happened was that my dad lived in a place in Soweto where he was neighbors with Arthur Maisel.
Okay.
And that also, I think, fueled the love for my dad for boxing. And I got to, when we visit my dad, I got to meet the man, So those are the things that, I feel like if something was to happen, it will happen. It will just find you. It'll happen. And I think that's what happened to me. Other than that, there was nothing really that would have pushed me towards wanting to really become a professional boxer. Because I remember even eventually when I would come and visit my parents here in Joburg, I would go to Braamfontein, to Branham and Tabani's gym and just sit there and watch these guys. And I loved it. Sometimes you go there and they're closed or they're not training on the day and you're just sitting out there looking at this building. And that builds the love. That shows that you really are attracted to this thing.
Yeah. And obviously that passion has carried through. You now have got your gym open in Benoni, VIP Boxing. And word is, and I know it's not words and words only, but there is a fantastic initiative currently underway between yourself and former world champion, Vuyani Bungu. You guys are putting together what you've termed VIP satellite boxing gyms. And the aim there is to assist youngsters, boys and girls, with their dreams of becoming future superstars. Tell me a little bit more, please.
100%, yeah. It was an idea that I've had for years because I've always wanted to branch out but I know I can't be everywhere. And I know there's a lot of, my thing is that there's a lot of top former boxers, world champions or no world champions, who are out there and they've been wasted. We need to put them to good use. But a lot of them are going through this because they can't afford financially, they can't open their own gyms, and some of them, because you see, boxing is, as much as there's boxing and there's other elements to it that turns it into a business, like a box fit and this. So you can open it as a boxing gym, but you can do all these other things that will bring you a bit of money. So that then becomes a business. But a lot of our guys don't have the business acumen to go and do that. So I thought then, why don't we bring about collaborations where we work with these champs? So the plan or the idea is not just with Bungu, is to go work with somebody, say, in Bloemfontein, another champion there, in Venda, another champion there, and open the satellite gym and help. And it doesn't really have to be called VIP. It could be called Mark's Boxing Academy in that area. But we know we've collaborated and we're helping you to establish this thing and to give back to the youth, you know. Unfortunately, COVID hit, my brother, and it shuttered everything.
Yeah.
Shuttered everything. We haven't spoken to Bungu for some time now. I mean, it's a year now since we had COVID, right?
Yep, just over a year.
Just over a year. So can you imagine, a year is a long time. And it killed off. I don't want to say kill off, but right now we are, unfortunately, we had to stop everything, unfortunately, because it affected the plans. Remember, the plan was to, I think last June we were planning to open that gym.
Yes.
The first gym. We got delayed a little bit because we were trying to do other things. We also wanted to do an event over there. And then before we know it, we were right into 2020, and then COVID hit us. And yeah, we haven't recovered yet. That's all I can say.
So a fascinating collaboration, fascinating idea, because I think, man, it is scary. I mean, we have so many global superstars, not just in boxing, in all sports. Yeah. And yet we find so often that these guys, once they finish their playing careers, and when I say guys, I'm referring to our female athletes too, they seem to disappear from the sport, and all of their knowledge either ends up for a small part in commentary, but very little goes back into building the superstars of the next generation. And it's almost, in my view, a sin for these great athletes to have gotten all of this fandom, have generated all of this stardom and this wealth, and then not to plow it back into the youth of tomorrow, you know, to grow the next generation. So fantastic initiative. Just a pity that COVID has put a spanner in those works, if I may say that. Hopefully not forever, hopefully soon to be rejuvenated.
Yeah. Well, we hope so, because, you know, Bungu was just the perfect person to work with. He's just such a gentleman. He's and also he trained boxers, and he still wants to train. He did make contact. I think he's still training some boxers, but you know, I don't know what the situation is with him there. It's not easy, and with COVID now, it's never easy. So he was just the perfect person to work with, and we were excited, and you know, we still are, because he's a friend. You know, he's a friend now of myself and my business partner, and we feel like, you know, that friendship will not die. So whether we, you know, sooner or later, we will eventually be able to do what we wanted to do with it.
Just staying with the COVID theme, how badly were your athletes affected by the, let's call it the year lockdown, the regulations in terms of training, in terms of events, fighters being able to get to events that promoters were putting together? How badly were you guys impacted?
Very bad, Mark. It has hit us to a point where we even lost almost all our boxes, because fights were cancelled. And you must also, unfortunately, we were also a small stable, also still trying to find our feet, and you know, Rome wasn't built in one day, and you know, you need solid foundation to to be able to survive a storm like a pandemic that lasts for over a year and comes so hard on you. You know, I don't know if you're aware of this. We're doing everything, be it feeding our boxes, finding accommodation, water, electricity, everything that we do, we were doing that out of our own pocket. We don't have sponsors. Our boxers don't have sponsors. We don't have as an academy, we don't have sponsors. So everything was being done from our own pockets. So, you know, it was like an investment that you think you're gonna put something back soon, you know?
Yeah.
And when a pandemic like COVID comes and hits you for a year, when you lost so much money, it's not easy to recover from that. There's a lot of people that come to me and say, "Hughes, we are so happy, and we're happy for you that your doors are still open, you're still trading." But you know, it hasn't been easy, and yes, we've lost a lot of our boxes. And Mark, I need to tell you this: boxing in South Africa is. They say boxing is a poor man's sport, but boxing in South Africa in itself, it's almost like it is poor in itself. And then the boxers are poor. So the whole thing is poor. So it needs a lot of injection in so many facets, not just financial.
Harry, so Harry,
I don't know if you hear what I'm saying.
Yes, I absolutely can. And this story, this line that you were using, that boxing in this country is poor, is something you're not the first person to tell me, and it's not the first time we've heard it. Let me ask you this. In your opinion, I mean, you've been a professional boxer, 34 fights under the belt. I'm assuming back in the day, finding a sponsor for yourself to get out there onto the road, to be able to justify this as a professional fighter, as a professional athlete, wasn't easy then. And I get the sense that even today, it has become harder and harder for, first of all, any fight sport, boxing included, to actually get any big brands on board to support them. And yet we will have brand after brand supporting absolute shenanigans at the level of cricket and rugby and soccer year in and year out. And yet where you've got a situation of a single athlete who has got no political aspirations, who is not playing any bloody games with anyone else's lives. He literally trains 3 times a day, or her trains 3 times a day, goes through a 6 to 9 week camp to go and fight overseas, only to find out that there's not enough money for this. And let's use baby Jake Matlala as an example, who eventually one day, after representing their country at the absolute highest level, ends up dying without not a single cent in his bank account. I mean, that's surely the biggest disgrace of any sport ever.
Yeah. And how do you see the other sad thing about that is that how do you then go tell the next champion, the next future champion, that boxing should be a career path that he must follow, and he must listen to you and say, yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, we have, as boxing people, we have a responsibility to go and resurrect the sport. And it's been happening for far too long for us not to really fix it. We need to get together. We need to talk. We need to engage. We need to engage and put feelings aside, put friendship aside, frankly, and engage on a level where we really are honest with each other, you know? Because if we don't solve this problem, not only will the sport of boxing die in the country, but we will lose, before it dies, we will lose credible people and credible boxers, but we will also fight amongst ourselves because there's just not enough to get around everybody. So we will fight amongst ourselves. But before that happens, we need to get together. We need to talk. We need to find a way. We need to find ways to make this thing happen, to make this thing work, and it can work and it can happen.
Harry, I want to come back to that fight amongst ourselves, because it seems as though that fighting amongst yourselves is already taking place. But before I get there, this weekend, BSA are holding their strategic workshop. I'm sure you know about it. Are you going to be there?
I wasn't aware. How have they announced that? Have they circulated?
Listen, Harry, I know. I received notification of the board's strategic workshop taking place this weekend, under the theme of renew, grow, and transform. And the only reason I know about it is that from a media point of view, I was sent a media invitation to come through on the Saturday afternoon and attend their press briefing on what their plans are for the future. But for someone who has been in the sport, not only as a professional athlete being represented and needing to be represented by BSA, to an individual who now trains, promotes, manages, and has been managing athletes for quite some time. We've seen a changing of the guard in BSA, from Tsolofelo Lejaka stepping down, him coming in and making some changes. And now we've got Cindy Nkomo, who's sitting there, the first female head of boxing in South Africa. I mean, that in itself is an absolute coup for the sport. But I've got to ask a very brutal question. Irrespective of the changing of the guard that is taking place at BSA, do you have any hope for boxing in this country, despite any number of workshops that are going to be taken, are being taken, and should be taken?
It's a very difficult question, and it's a brutal one as well. And I have to commend you for that, Mark. Those are the kind of questions we need to be asking, and those are the kind of discussions and conversations that we need to be having. I do have hope, and I have to have hope, because I'm in the sport. I'm, every day when I wake up and say I'm going to work, this is where I go. This is what I come and do, and this is my job. Until I find something else to do, this is always what I do. So I have to have hope, but I feel like we need to, and this goes for BSA as well. We need to engage more. I kind of feel like, BSA maybe discuss things in-house and want to implement. I don't know. I stand to be corrected. I feel like they need to engage the people of boxing a little bit more on finding how to best find solutions and how to best move things forward, so that the sport can move to another stage, to another level. Because the reason I'm saying this is because the problems that we're sitting with are way bigger than what we the naked eye sees. And sometimes you think that you've solved the problem, but you've only scratched the surface. So that's my take. And don't be picky. Don't choose who you want to listen to. Listen to everybody, because you don't know where the solution is going to come from.
Absolutely, Harry, I fully agree with those sentiments. Let's hope that something fundamental comes out of the strategic workshop taking place this weekend. But coming back to that other point that you made, and a question that I definitely have for you is collaborations are clearly something that is missing in first of all, my view, in sport in general across the country. In boxing, most notably so, not a lot of collaboration is taking place. So much so that this lack of collaboration seemed to force you into releasing a video, I think it was last week or the week before, regarding Zinga Vusile. Talk me through, because obviously for someone like you to be able to put a video together and specifically aim it at an individual, one individual in the sport, okay, who I've spoken to on many occasions, and I've spoken to him about the fact that there is a lot of negative publicity that goes along with him because of the, many of the tactics that he employs in terms of getting athletes and getting young fighters to fight for him. Obviously now in his role as head of MTK Africa, that becomes a lot more important for him to be able to pull off and achieve. But talk to me about what sort of point you have to be at for you to issue a video that is specifically aimed at one person alone around this issue of collaboration and working together.
I like how you phrased your question. What point did I have to be at? That's funny. Look, I don't know if you know my relationship with Colin Nathan.
No, I don't. No, I don't.
So Colin is a former friend and a former trainer of mine. I worked with Colin just before I left South Africa, just before I went to England, and we had a very good relationship. We were really good friends, or so I thought. Until and I was gone for almost 9 years, and every time I come home, I'd go still train at his gym and help the guys there, and we were buddies, we were boys, and until I obviously came back home officially, I think 2011. I came back 2010, and then I went back officially. I came back 2012.
Okay.
And then there was a youngster that joined, but I trained in England, but felt like he wanted to turn pro with me under my guidance. And he came, he joined us. So I started training this boy because I still wanted to fight, but injuries were just a little bit too much. So I'd still go to his gym and train some clients there and help the boys in the gym. So this boy came from England, and I started training this boy. So that started bringing me the attention from other boxers. So I started training other boxers. So in a way, I started having my own boxers. And then fast forward a year later, I trained a boy that you will know very well, Levato Famini. And man, we produced some magic.
Yeah, you did. You did.
Mark, we produced some magic. We had 6 fights. I think it was something crazy, like 6 fights, 6 knockouts, or 6 fights, 5 knockouts, and some devastating knockouts.
Yes.
And we, and that was, so anyway, so Colin went and spoke to the boy and took the boy from me, and that broke my heart. And that's where the problem started. Actually, it didn't start with that boy. The boy from England, when he came over, again, he did the same thing. He went, spoke to this boy, and he wanted to get involved with this boy without consulting with me first. And I spoke to him. I lost it, and I confronted him, and he said he was trying to help me. I said, but that's not how you help somebody. You don't help somebody by taking from them or trying to take from them. And it was evident when it came to Lerato that no, it was never help. It was just how he operates, because he went and took Lerato, and I gave. I contacted him. What is this? He didn't want to talk about it. I moved out of his gym, and I told myself maybe there was a way of God telling me to go look for my own place.
Okay.
I moved out. I started my own thing, and as they say, the rest is history. So now you want to know about the video?
Yes, I do want to know about the video, but I want to ask you yet another brutal question, if you don't mind. So here's another brutal question coming your way. So I fully understand it, and I fully understand that you're building towards something, and someone comes and takes it away from you. You should be pissed, and you should be well within your rights to confront that individual and find out why, particularly someone that you believed was a friend. But here's the brutal question. Yeah. At the end of the day, there's another person in the mix there. And that other person gets the opportunity to make a choice. If that other person, based on balancing out what Harry brings to the party and what Colin brings to the party, and I'm using you and Colin in the context of this conversation, but it could be anyone. It could be Bob Arum, it could be Eddie Hearn, it could be, I mean,
100%.
We know it takes place in the sport, but in that situation, there is a young fighter in the middle. And surely it's then up to that young fighter to make up their mind to be able to say, but hold on, in this instance, Harry's never going to get me there, but Colin will. So sorry, Harry, but I've got to go with the guy that is going to allow me to achieve my dreams. I mean, is that not what actually it boils down to more so than Harry versus Colin?
Yeah, and it's exactly what happened. It's exactly what happened, Mark, because the boy, as we speak now, he's got like, what, 3 titles? And he's highly ranked. If I'm not mistaken, he's in the top 5 in the featherweight division. He's in contention to fight the #1 guy in the featherweight division. Is what, the WBC silver or youth or something like that?
Yep.
And that's a good question. And that's exactly one person's strategy.
Okay.
That's one person's strategy. And yes, the boy will go with the other one because the other one, and it's actually exactly what the boy was promised, heaven and earth. And I suppose that's what he's getting, heaven and earth. And Mark, I want to ask you this in the way that you will understand it, and everybody that sees this will understand it, that it is not a personal attack necessarily, but it's also, I'm trying to say, what about me? What about Chief? What about the other guy that is there bringing this boy up? Because we also have the same ambitions to say we want to one day lift a world title with this kid, right? So hence and you touched on that, hence my thing to say, why don't we collaborate? Because if you, Mark, or you, Colin Nathan, has the connections, the know-how, it's not even the know-how, it's the connections more than the know-how to get this kid to the next level. Why don't you be fair enough and sensitive in your heart of hearts to say, but this other coach also needs to benefit out of this. It's not just me. For the hard work that he has put, when I take from him, how many people, just not just him, how many people in his life will I be disadvantaging? This guy's got to send kids to school. Yeah. This guy has got to put food on his table, his family, and this and that. I saw something, an article somewhere, and there's another gentleman from Cape Town. I think it's Dave something. Dave something. I think he's also a ring announcer. And his argument was that after Colin took Azinga, look where he got him. And you can argue the same about Lerato or any of the fighters.
Yes.
He gets them to that next level. But are we going to allow that and normalize it and say it's okay? There will be trainers whose job will just be to produce, get the rough diamond, polish it, and give it to this guy for this guy to go and benefit the most. What about us? So hence now my point in saying, why don't you think of collaborating with these guys instead of going and taking from them? And I really, really appreciate the job and the work that Colin is doing and the position that he has got himself in to now be with MTK, obviously initially or originally being with Rodney, and getting himself to a level where he's now with MTK and he can go and negotiate all this fight internationally. That should be used, Mark, and I want you to hear me out here and understand me. That should be used to benefit the entire boxing community in the country, not just one person. Come on now. that way, once we do that, if we can do it that way, then, Mark, let me ask you, it won't be a brutal question because it's not really brutal.
I'm happy with brutal questions.
Let me ask you that one because it's really not. How many world champions do we have in South Africa? It's actually a sad question.
Yeah, so when I last checked, I think there was 4 world champions or 5 tops that we have in this country.
Who are they? Murithi
Mtalani, Kevin Larina. Oh, now you've got me.
You see that?
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
No. This is the point I made when I first made this statement ages ago. Is that we continuously have to think who our world champions are, because they are not household names, because they seem to be hidden away from us, and only 1 or 2 people seem to have access to them to be able to promote them. And as a result of that, and I think this is where you're trying to get me to say what I'm about to say, and you've succeeded. And it's as a result of that, okay, these young kids aren't the superstars that they could be, because only one person is allowed to market them.
There you go. That is actually one of the things I was getting to. But I'm also saying that it's going to be physically impossible to train and produce champions alone. You see, our problem, that is what I'm saying, our problem is so diverse. Our problem it is a mixture of so many things. And this thing of Colin Nathan could also be adding up to that. If, for example, Colin could go out and say, right, I'm going to identify, for argument's sake, 10 trainers who have got potential, and I will work with them. I will not take their boxes must stay with them, but I will do my best to support those guys, to get them good fights, to do this. And that gives 10 trainers to focus on 10 boxes, harness and hone their skills to a level where we can go and compete successfully with the rest of the world. Don't you think before you know it, we will be sitting with 10 more world champions in no time?
Absolutely, I fully agree with you. And the point that you make about collaboration is unfortunately sadly lacking in South African sport. There is not enough of it. We have situations where, as you've described, as I've mentioned, not enough previous superstars, previous greats, previous world champions are back in those respective sports, passing the knowledge back on to the youngsters. And then we have situations where there seems to be more a situation of one person trying to control a little bit too much more than, and I don't want to say that they're not allowed to, because they are perfectly allowed to do whatever they want to do. But at the end of the day, it seems as though it's at the expense of the sport from a bigger picture point of view.
It has the sport. Now, I'm sitting here, let's just say Chief had 4 top guys and they all left him for a guy that will progress them to the next level. So then what we have done, if we allow that, we have made Chief, who is a very fantastic trainer, we have made him redundant. So we've took him out of the system where he could be producing us potential world champions. Now if we allow this to continue, how many other trainers will suffer the same at the hands of somebody that obviously has more advantages than the others? Now we are making all these trainers redundant. 5, 10 trainers that could have been given back, producing, giving us world champions. We have just made them redundant by allowing an unfair situation to continue.
Harry, I'm going to throw this at you. And I'm going to disagree with that statement around making the trainers redundant, and this is why I'm going to disagree with it, because I'm going to make a point by asking you one question. How many Olympic gold medalists has South Africa produced in boxing?
Olympic. Repeat your question again.
How many Olympic medalists has South Africa produced in boxing?
I can't think of any.
Okay, so that's the point that I wanted to make, is that we've got all these champions, we've got all these fantastic trainers, we've got all this champion material, and yet maybe as a result of boxing's inability to get their dumbass house in order, Sonabo's inability to even get a board going, a competent board going, Boxing South Africa's inability to actually guide that process. And we know they can't own that process because they're too separate. It's pro versus amateur. But think about it. Surely, if this is the situation in the professional ranks, surely it would be far better advised than to say, Harry, come on. I understand your point, but what happens if you were to become the guy that Colin can never be? You go become, as well as 7 or 8 other trainers, go become the guy that goes and earns South Africa medals, bronze, silver, or gold. Something this country has never been able to achieve at the Olympics. But I think politics, the bullshit that takes place at administration levels, that aside, don't you think that is an alternative instead of, and listen, I'm not for any second saying that what you're saying is it should be shot down and it's not relevant. I fully agree with what you're saying, but what I'm saying is, should we not be directing those resources into a more productive space of going, well, if the pro sector is going to be owned by 4 or 5 guys, then surely we as top-end trainers, because we know we can do it, because look at those guys there, why aren't we molding the next gold medalists, silver medalists, and bronze medalists? Because then South Africa is not going to just have the occasional medalist at the Olympics. We're going to have a consistent, let's call it, train of boxers walking away with medals every 4 years.
Or at least getting to the finals.
Yeah, well, even that would be better than what we're currently doing.
100%. Mark, I totally agree with you. I hear you 100% what you say. But it's structures, it's the politics, it's this and that. But at the same time, people should be allowed to have a choice.
Agreed.
I'm not a fan of training amateurs. I like more the pro game. I don't know, someone like Chief probably is not a fan of just focusing on the amateurs. He wants to get into the pro game. But there's also the issue of money. There's ways money is in the pro game. So he wants to produce that guy. And I hear what you're saying. We just also need to talk about these things. Maybe somebody needs to approach someone like Chief and say, Chief, don't you just want to focus on producing amateurs? And then there will be so much money given to you because he needs to feed his family when it's all said and done. I don't think he wants to sit there and watch and produce young upcoming superstars and then watch them go shine somewhere else and he's getting nothing. And the reason I'm saying people are being made redundant is it's in that way, because without money, let's face it, Mark, without money, Chief can produce all the amateurs, as many amateurs as he wants to, with handouts, whether it be gloves and stuff like that, in the small gym that he operates from. When it's all said and done, Chief needs to take some money home.
Yeah. And
he needs to justify all the time the hours that he puts into producing those amateurs to his wife, to his family, and even to himself. I don't think, from what I gather, Chief gets them very young and he trains them from a very young age. So something tells me he will be comfortable doing that role. And this is the thing, Mark. I'm having this conversation with you. Maybe that's what BSA and Sanabo needs to hear. Maybe that's what Chief himself needs to hear. Maybe that's what needs to be discussed. And we need to look after each other. Directly or indirectly. We don't need to disadvantage each other. Because once that happens, it creates anger, it creates negativity, it creates you took from me, you stole from me. And let's face it, if somebody takes from you something that you were supposed to benefit from, you're left with nothing. And you're not going to be happy with that.
Harry, 100%. I fully understand where you're coming from, and what you say, I agree with. I'm not a fan of the current setup, the way it's currently working. I do think a lot more work has got to go in, but unfortunately, your words are so true. Money makes the world go round, and as much as we may have the greatest talent at amateur level, There are no structures. There is no administration. The legislation that defines the sport in this country has failed the athletes, in my opinion, and will continue to fail the athletes until such time as we get something proper going. Listen, this has been a fascinating discussion, and it's not a discussion that I think we're going to ever resolve here. I think I would definitely want to come to your gym, sit down, bring the cameras. Let's have a deeper discussion, maybe even a deeper conversation with BSA and Sanabo as well. But I think, Harry,
I'd love it.
It's been a revelation. Thank you so much for your time. I know you got to get back to the gym and the young boys there. Go do that. This is not the last time we're going to be chatting. I look forward to the next one, but next time it's going to be face to face, right?
I love it. I'll make you a cup of coffee. How's that?
Absolutely. Thank you. No sugar, hey?
No sugar, no problem. No problem.
Harry, once again, thank you for your time. Thank you for the debate. Thank you for answering the brutal questions. Not many guys really want to answer the questions, especially the brutal ones. I appreciate it, and I look forward to us catching up soon.
Thank you so much, Mark. It's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed this. I've really enjoyed this, and I look forward to meeting you in person.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, man. Cheers. Ciao. Bye.